Hello, my name's Missy Diesick, and I'm the Director of the Council on Aging in Wareham. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of Senior Safety. Senior Safety is a collaborative effort between the Wareham Council on Aging, District Attorney Ted Cruz, and the Wareham Community Television. The program was created to bring valuable information to our senior community during the current pandemic. Today's topic is romance scams. Our guests for the segment are Plymouth County District Attorney Ted Cruz and Wareham Council on Aging Director Sharon Frank. The Federal Trade Commission has reported that romance scams are on the rise at a rapid pace. Statistics show that in 2015, the agency received 8,500 complaints from victims who fell prey, and in 2019, that number had increased to 11,500. The rise in this number is alarming, and the FTC states that this crime is dramatically underreported. District Attorney Cruz, thank you for joining us for this segment. Can you tell us a little bit about romance scams?
Sure. Hi, Missy. Thanks for having me on today. Sharon, hello. It's great to see everybody, to be part of this great program that we've been trying to bring a lot of these around our county, especially during COVID. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ted Cruz, and I'm the Plymouth County District Attorney. And today we're here, as Missy said, we're here to talk about romance scams. And romance scams have been around forever. And the problem is they are very real, and unfortunately, they're on the rise. Basically, a romance scam is a confidence trick. It can be carried out by both genders, and usually it involves feigning romantic intentions toward a victim, gaining their affection, and then they use that very goodwill in order to commit a fraud. Statistics show from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, they're incredibly alarming. From the 11,500 reported cases in 2019, con artists posing as romantic suitors have bilked a total of $346 million from their victims. These crimes are very underreported, and they're also occurring globally.
District Attorney Cruz, can you tell us why we're seeing this alarming rate in this type of scam?
Yeah, unfortunately, Sharon, the reason why we're seeing a rise in this type of scam is because it's successful. These scammers are experts at what they do. They seem very genuine, they seem very caring, and they come across as believable. And unfortunately, the internet has really been their most valuable tool. Before the internet, con artists would be like those that we would see in the old movies. The people that would seek out a victim, they would arrange a way to meet them in person. They would romance this victim. They'd be extremely charming and extremely patient. They'd wine and dine their victims. They'd lavish them with expensive gifts. And what they're doing is they're laying the foundation and establishing a trusting, loving relationship with their victim. The romancing back then would take several months or maybe even a year to establish. But once the con artists, and that's what they are con artists, are secure in their relationship and their guard was down with their victims, they would begin to gain access to their bank accounts and eventually swindle them out of their life savings, their jewelry, and any other assets that they may have acquired. Today, with the internet and social media, romance scams have moved online. The premise is the same, but the con artist has an easier tool in order to swindle their victims.
District Attorney Cruz, can you tell us just how a romance scam works?
Sure, Missy. An online romance scam occurs when a criminal adopts a fake online identity to gain somebody's attention or their trust and their affection. The con artists are presently they're on dating sites, social media sites, gaming sites, Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, Words with Friends. The list goes on. There's a lot of different apps out there, dating apps that are out there also. The scam is going to create a fake online profile, a personal profile that's fake. They're going to use a fictional name, or they're going to take on the identity of a real trusted person. Many times they're talking about people that are in the military, aid workers, professionals working abroad, such as doctors with international organizations, oil rig workers. Generally, what happens is they will use stolen photographs of attractive people. This is known as catfishing. And the sole purpose of using these photos is to lure people in or ask others to contact them. The scammer's intention is to establish a relationship as quickly as possible. They endear themselves to the victim and they gain their trust. And once they connect with the victim online, they will immediately try to lure that victim away from the social media site and suggest they have personal chats, either by the phone, through direct messaging, or email. The scammer is going to often use the illusion of a romantic or close relationship to manipulate and or to steal from the victim. Scammers will flirt, they'll charm, they'll romance their victims over the next few months or weeks as they escalate that relationship. Some scammers are going to go as far as proposing marriage, and they'll make plans to meet you in person. But in most cases, that doesn't happen. Eventually, when the scammer feels that the victim is truly invested in that relationship, the scammer is going to ask the victim for money.
District Cruz, what are some of the methods that an online scammer will use?
Well, these scammers, and like I said, remember, they're con artists and they're good at what they do, and they go from event to event. And unfortunately, many times they'll use crises, or they're going to use trying to gain somebody's affection. They will go to great lengths to get your interest and to get your trust. You know, the most common method carried out now is going to be by communication via either phone, email, or text. And communications are exchanged between the victim and the scammer over a period of time until that scammer feels that they've connected with that victim enough to move forward in the scam to ask for money. Over that period of time, you're going to hear the scammer going to be using and showering the victim with loving words, sharing alleged personal information. They're going to be very patient, and they're going to take months to build what might feel like the romance of a lifetime to the unsuspecting victim. They're going to pretend to book a flight to come visit them, only to never really actually come. Most scammers are going to avoid meeting their victim in person. That's because it makes it easier and more plausible for them to ask the victim for money in the near future. Most scammers are going to tell you they live in another country, that they're usually in the building or construction industry. They're engaged in projects outside the US. They're working on oil rigs in the middle of the ocean. It's always the same. So once they gain the trust of the victim and the victim's defenses are down, and many people that are out there may be lonely, they may want to believe that this stuff is true. They will subtly, and maybe sometimes even directly, ask the victim for money. And it may start out as what's relatively mundane requests, such as gas or travel money to come see you, a loan to pay off medical expenses for a sick relative. They'll be asking for banking information to assist them with an inheritance that they just received that they will share with the victim after they promise marriage. Credit card numbers for purchases of travel tickets, medical expenses for your families or seriously ill family members, educational expenses. The scam is often going to say that they need a loan. That's the way they're going to phrase it, for a financial hardship, failed business, loss of employment, or that they were a victim of mugging or some other terrible event that occurred in their lives. They're trying to gain your trust.
Why are these romance scams so successful?
I think the main reason why these scams are successful is that, unfortunately, they're successful. And they're successful because these individuals, these con artists, are good at what they do, and they know how to play their victim. Because don't forget, while they're playing you, they're playing other people too. It's not just one person. They're going to begin talking to people. They're going to be very charming. They're going to be very flirty. They're going to work very hard keeping that relationship going. They're going to send love poems and sex games and emails. And many times they've asked victims to send intimate photos of themselves. And eventually, and many times, they will use the victim's participation in these sort of acts as blackmail, as an effort to manipulate them for money down the road, and also for the use of their bank accounts to either drain them or use them for laundering purposes. They appear to be building a strong, loving relationship with the victim by giving out promises of being married one day. They're going to invite you to their country. It sounds great, but if travel is actually made, it tends to be extremely dangerous for the victim. Not only does it pose a risk to the victim's financial safety, it also poses a risk to their personal safety. Some victims, once they've arrived in the country, were beaten, robbed, and even murdered.
District Cruz, have any of these crimes been investigated or prosecuted?
Yeah, Sharon, they are investigated all the time, and generally by the feds, because most times these sort of crimes are in the internet and they're beyond our state jurisdiction. Myself, as the Plymouth DA, I have jurisdiction of Plymouth County. The Attorney General has jurisdiction of the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts for state crimes. But the federal government usually is dealing when you go outside our state or outside our country. So most of these are federal investigations. And the FBI has investigated multiple cases. Out of the reported cases last year, they found the median loss for romance fraud victims in various ages were a certain amount. So like if you were in your 20s, the median loss of money was $770. In your 30s, strike that, in your 50s, it was about twice as much, $1,550. 60s, $3,000. 70s, $6,450. People have reported refinancing their homes and cashing out their retirement accounts. And scammers, they go where the money is. And most criminals know that older adults have the majority of assets here in the United States. Last year, federal prosecutors brought a number of different romance cases out. Some of the examples are a 76-year-old widow in Rhode Island transferred more than $660,000 to bank accounts she thought belonged to United States Army general in Afghanistan. A Detroit man reported meeting a woman online who quickly told him that she loved him. When she needed help, he ended up sending her $13,000 over time. It turned out that she was a fraud. In Oklahoma, 10 Nigerian and United States citizens were indicted in the fraud ring targeting multiple victims in 3 states. A grand jury in Georgia has indicted a man accused of bilking a Virginia woman who had a large trust of $6.5 million. Here's kind of a brief synopsis of a case that actually went well for the victim. It was printed in the New York Times in March of 2020 by reporter Paula Spann. This victim, like I said, is one of the luckier ones. A man that this woman knew, that she knew him as James Gibson, was leaving for Europe. And he suddenly called his victim and he said that his Netflix card had expired and that he really wanted to watch movies on the plane. So he asked her if she'd go to Walmart and buy him a $100 Netflix card. $100 Netflix card per person that you know. She did it. She complied. She went to Walmart. She bought the card. She called James back and she read him the number. 3 days later, he called the victim again. And this time he told her that he left a bag of expensive tools in the cab that when he got off the plane, he took a cab and he forgot his tools were there. He sounded very upset, very hysterical on the phone. The tools were worth $4,000, but he found replacements for just $2,600, in which she sent him the money and he'd pay her back. That woman did the right thing. She took a break. She thought about it. She had a cup of coffee and wondered, why would an international traveler have no credit card or an employer willing to help him? When the man called back, she said to him, "You're scamming me." She hung up and she blocked him on her phone and online. She posted about the fraud on Nextdoor and Facebook. And other women came forward to say that they had also similarly been defrauded, but they were too humiliated to tell anybody. They used people's embarrassment against them. And they're hoping that if you get caught in one of these scams, you'll be too embarrassed to tell anybody else. That's the worst thing we can do. We have to tell everybody, because like I said, remember, these people are good at what they do. They're good at stealing, and we have to let people know what's going on. But like I said, those are some examples with women being ripped off, but it's not just women. A Montana man publicly shared his story. He was home after sustaining an injury at work and was caught up in a romance scam for about a year. He'd just been divorced after a 20-year marriage, and he received a friend request from a woman on Facebook in January of 2018. He didn't know this woman. She looked nice. She showed him pictures of herself dressed up when she was going to church, supposedly. They exchanged selfies of each other. She seemed very interested in him, and she made him feel likable, loving, and interested. He was a lonely guy. After 2.5 months, she broke her cell phone and needed a new one. And because she was a student, she asked him to buy it for her. He wired her $1,000 via Western Union to another person who was able to get her the money. Over time, she had more and more stories trying to lure him in through this relationship. She talked about her murdered father. She talked about a legal battle that she had for a $28 million inheritance, that she needed to keep things off the radar because her father's old business had ties to organized crime.
Jeez.
He helped her with the inheritance and bought a lot of gift cards, and he'd read the numbers off the back for her. He learned the truth when he asked her for a selfie, and she sent him a picture of another woman. Now he states, "I know I'm not the only divorced middle-aged man that's lonely and wants somebody to talk to." She had been sending him, not just to him, but other people, probably around the world, she would rip them off. His total loss over the course of 8 months was approximately $31,000.
District Attorney Cruz, how can we protect ourselves from this type of scams?
Missy, I caution everyone, as I do in all these scams that are so prevalent right now, to remain vigilant. That is the most important thing. It's like everything. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. These scammers are experts. They're going to lure you in. The longer they talk to you, the longer they have an online conversation with you or a phone conversation with you, anyone is susceptible to becoming a victim. But watch out for the warning signs. When you meet an individual, whether it be on a dating app site or a friend site or just a chat site, when they start professing love really quickly, when they claim to be overseas or in the military service, when they ask for money and they lure you off that social media site, they don't want you on that site anymore. They claim the money's for emergencies, hospital bills, or travel. They tell you they plan to visit, but they can't because of an emergency. The ways that we can protect ourselves from individuals like this, from the professional thieves of which they are, is in an online relationship, always proceed slowly. Always ask lots of questions. Be leery if the individual seems too perfect or quickly asks you to leave the site to communicate privately. If the individual attempts to isolate you, beware. They try to get you away from your friends and your family. Or if they request inappropriate photos or financial information that can be used to later extort you. Remember, your financial information is your key to your internet safe. Don't give it to anyone that you don't know and or trust. Certainly not to somebody you just met online. Never send money to a person you haven't met in person. Be leery of the pro data who will actually try to set up that face-to-face meeting though. Don't be sending money like that. Always consider the possibility that it's a scam, particularly if any of these warning signs appear. I know it's hard, but you have to try to remove the emotion from your decision-making process, no matter how caring or persistent this person is. Do an image search on Google to see if that picture is associated with somebody else. They will go online and steal pictures and use those and say that there's some attractive, good-looking person. And that's, once again, luring you into that fake relationship. Be alert to things like spelling and grammar mistakes, inconsistencies in their stories, that their camera is never working when you want to meet them virtually. Be cautious when you're sharing your personal pictures or videos with those prospective partners. If you do agree to meet a prospective partner, tell your families or friends. If there's a legitimate relationship, there's no reason to keep it secret. Remember, they try to get you off social media once they lure you in, talk to you privately, then they don't want you telling anybody about it. That should be a red flag for you. Be incredibly wary of requests for money and never send money or give your credit card or bank information to anybody. Once you give money and numbers out, we can't put the toothpaste back on the tube. It's out, it's out. Never, ever agree to transfer money for anybody else. That could be deemed, depending upon what they're doing, as money laundering. That is a federal criminal offense. Never, ever transfer money for somebody else. Be very careful of what you post online. The scammers are using the information that we put out there that we think is harmless, and they can use that and see what you like, what you don't like, and they can form their patterns and their relationships to lure you in because, once again, they're very good at what they do.
District Cruz, what should we do if we think we've been the victim of a romance scam?
Sharon, the first thing that you need to do is stop communicating with that scammer immediately. Don't let embarrassment or humiliation take over, what has occurred. Talk to somebody you trust. Pay attention if your family or friends say they're concerned about your new love interest. Report it to your local police, the FBI, and the Federal Trade Commission, and also report it to the social media site that you met the scammer on. Remember, the best way that we can stop this stuff is through education and knowledge that other people will know. If we get the word out that seniors are being targeted or anybody's being targeted, people will then have a better idea of what the issues are that's out there, so they can be even more wary than what they should be. Be sure to give the social media site, when you call them, let them know the scammer's profile name and any other details that you might have to help them stop other victims from being scammed. If you think you might have shared your credit card number or your bank account information with that scammer, call your credit card company and your bank and immediately report it.
District Attorney Cruz, you mentioned that these scammers will take on the identity of military personnel. Can you expand on this a little bit?
Sure, Missy. Unfortunately, it's been determined this is really a rapidly growing technique that the scammers are currently using. Scam artists will use the names and profiles of soldiers, because that usually inspires, trust, confidence, admiration in the victims. Military public relations will publish things regarding the soldiers or the Marines or whatever branch that they may be in. They'll put out, a lot of great things that these men and women are doing. So it's out in the public, in the public airing. These photographs, this information can easily be stolen by anybody. And what we're seeing is that they're being stolen by organized internet crime gangs that often operate out of Nigeria or Ghana. These internet crime gangs appear to be less formal than like mafia type gangs that we're probably more familiar with, but they're more organized around familial and ethnic lines. This is in addition to the fact that there's probably 250 different distinct ethnic languages in Nigeria, makes it incredibly difficult to trace. So these gangs are less susceptible of infiltration and investigation from law enforcement. Scammers using military personnel pictures will often tell their victims, 1, they're lonely. 2, that they're supporting an orphanage with their own money. 3, that they need financial assistance because they are in a combat zone and can't access their own money. The scammer will always ask that money be sent to a third person so that somebody else will be able to collect it. Sometimes the third party is real, sometimes it's fiction. Scammers will often ask that money be wired via Western Union or MoneyGram, and they'll set up a secret passphrase in response to that victim. The scammers know that the funds sent via Western Union or MoneyGram do not have to be claimed by showing an identification. A secret passphrase and a response is all they need to receive the wired money, and this money can be picked up anywhere in the world. Scammers sometimes will request funds be sent in Bitcoin, which is a digital currency that the scammer can retrieve through an app on their phone. As I stated previously, this is the most rapidly growing technique that the scam will use, so we all need to be vigilant.
This is really great information and very valuable to our senior community. Is there some place that our viewers can go to get additional information regarding the resources offered by your office?
Yes, Missy, we have all the information that we talked about today and even more posted on our website. Our website can be accessed at PlymouthDA.com. Any phone number, anything regarding credit cards and scams and ongoing situations that are occurring in our county, all the information is right there for you, or it gives you numbers and information whereby it will help aid you to get the information that you need. So I want to thank you, Missy. I want to thank you, Sharon, for having me on today. It's great to be able to share this important information with seniors and our communities. And we just ask everybody to continue to be safe, and we'll all be back to normal before you know it.
Thank you so much, District Attorney Cruz and Sharon, for coming on our program. This was really great. And I would like to thank all of you at home for taking time to watching this show. I look forward to seeing you again for one of our senior safety series. Thank you.